Hello, viewers. Well, the EGX show took place just over a week ago, and we've been catching up with all of the content from the show on the channel. You'll see separate videos for each, but we thought we'd have a chat as well just to talk about the show itself and some of the games and a bit more feedback and reflection since the videos went live. I'm joined today by Kevin.
Hello there.
And we'll be talking about various games at the show. And also, if you have questions in the comments, do let us know what you thought about the show if you were there, and some of these games that were on display as well, and perhaps what you're looking forward to when it comes to indie games. Now, EGX is an EGX Res really helped to show off the world of indie games like no other. It's a really good opportunity for independent developers to get people to see their games at a reasonable price in terms of showing them off at the show, but also get feedback from the general public in terms of where those games need improvements. So it's always been a good showcase, and I'm somebody who's quite supportive of independent developers. I know that they're working with limited means, limited tech, but they're very passionate and they're driven by passion, and often they don't earn anything from this. I mean, or if they do earn something, it's very little comparatively. It's just simply finding a niche, taking a risk in a way that the bigger publishers wouldn't. And one of the games, I guess, that sort of starts that in terms of trying a bit of initiative is Inertial Drift, which we showed recently. Of course, it was a good opportunity at the show to see this being played, to try it out. You really do need to try it to understand it. This, for me, is the true essence of an indie game. It's taking an idea, turning it on its head, and trying to be innovative, finding a system that works. Now, I can't really say how complete the final game will be, but I can tell you that when we got to the city track, which you'll be seeing here, it seemed to come alive. And I felt that the mountain tracks were visually, artistically, I wasn't so keen on them. The whole pink red glow didn't work for me. And I felt it sort of, the road was so wide to introduce you. I felt it lacked something. But once we got to the city circuit, I felt this feels like Midnight Mountain Racers. It feels like it's got that whole sort of Night Driver vibe to it, Drift King vibe. And of course, when speaking to Michael, the developer, it had that, he was inspired by games like Ridge Racer, and I really sort of felt that. So I felt this was looking good. Kevin, what were your impressions of Inertial Drift just seeing it?
It's very much a game we need right now in the racing genre, because we don't have a Ridge Racer this generation, which is crazy when you think about it. So anything sort of Ridge Racer-esque is going to pique our interests. And, this one certainly does look pretty decent. It has a range of different controls. There's 16 ways apparently to drift. There's different methods of drifting. So there's a lot of nuance there. So you will have to experiment and find something that you like. So it's good to have a game that has that depth, because we've played recent arcade racers, indie titles that lack depth of handling and sort of control. So, this is certainly onto a winner in that respect. The art design is interesting. What's interesting about it is the fact that it's very different, isn't it? Depending on which environment you go to. So you have a very strong pink aesthetic for certain tracks, and then you have a more sort of darker, more nighttime, more realistic, I guess, tone to other tracks. So it is a striking art style in that sense. So they have that strong art style which will appeal to some and not to others. So but it definitely has its own sort of look about it. I like the shiny cars. I like the big car. It's a nice big car. It's like a very sort of arcade style to it. You have the rear lights, the smoke kicked up by the tires. It has a strong art style for sure. It has a sort of confidence and a boldness about it which we need in our arcade races. So early impressions are good from me, and it'd just be interesting to see, like you say, how it plays. Once you get your hand on that controller, how is the drifting? Is it too complex for its own good? Is it easy to get into and hard to master? I mean, what was your early impressions in terms of accessibility?
For me, it was the first run was nightmare. I was like, my goodness, I don't know where I am with this. Then I had to sort of just slowly go round and look at what the one stick did and what the other stick did, and try to get an idea behind it. I'd say I walked away with a better idea, but I still didn't fully have it at the end. I mean, I was getting better at it, but what I realized was you need to know the circuits and know the precise way to get through those corners. So I don't know how much longevity it has when you learn the technique. That's the main. I mean, the top players will get it,
Yeah.
but it's definitely for a more advanced player. I think a lot of beginners will struggle with it, but that's not to say it's a bad game. I mean, I think that it depends on how much content is in the game.
Mm.
It's no good just having 2 or 3 tracks and linking a couple of locations. They need to have
Yeah.
quite a lot, and of course they've got 16 styles of car for you to get your teeth into. So, I think artistically it's a mixed bag. I think I do like my cell shading, so I'm a big fan of that. I think menu screens, everything looks great.
Hmm.
I think that I don't think there's any kind of storyline in it, but I don't know why. I always feel that stuff like this does work well when you have that anime look to it,
Yeah.
in adding a bit of
Bit of character.
competitive, yeah, a bit of character between the different cars and drivers and
Mm.
car owners clubs and stuff like that. But this is an indie development. There's only so much he can do in this game. One thing he doesn't have, or they don't have in the game, is I said it would be great to have a photo mode and a replay mode, because
Oh
a lot
yeah.
of
Yeah.
tandem drifters and stuff like that, they like to show off their drifts in videos,
Mm.
and I feel that although it's probably quite costly to implement,
Yeah.
it would be a really important addition for
It would be
YouTubers.
major, wouldn't it? I mean, look at the
Yeah,
visuals, look at the particle effects. I mean, it'd make for some fantastic photos, wouldn't it?
yeah,
But yeah, it'd be a shame not to have that. But and also, it needs a bit of variety as well. It'd be interesting to see what event types it has. Outside of the basic sort of checkpoint stuff or time trial stuff. I hope they have something there. But like you say, it all comes back to what they can do within a strict budget.
yeah,
So often you find these games are very limited experiences, but they're good for what they are, and obviously they won't be charging a huge amount for them. So you sort of get what you pay for in that sense. But it's nice to have games like this. It's nice to see so much diversity at the moment in the indie racing genre, because there's so many indie games that have come out of the blue now, isn't there? It's just
yeah,
really
yeah.
a strong period now for racing games. And we had a big lull recently, and we had some good games I think it was 2016, was it, with Mantis Burn,
Mm.
tabletop racing, games like that, Riptide, GP, Renegade as well was another good one. But since then, it all sort of gone a bit quiet. So it's nice to see loads of indie racing games have come back to the fore now. So, and they all look quite interesting in their own ways, aren't they? So,
Yeah, all coming along. So, I mean, Inertial Drift, I think, like you say, the one thing you highlighted there was obviously no Ridge Racer this generation. It's a shame that Namco have sort of forgotten one of their key brands. It
oh,
would
it's
be
unbelievable.
wonderful to see Ridge Racer launch the PS5.
Mm.
I would love to see Ridge Racer back, but I don't know if Namco know how to make one anymore. That's the only problem. However, they did a good job with Ace Combat,
Oh
so
yeah,
maybe
amazing.
maybe they can come back. But
Yeah,
they lost their way on Ridge Racer
they did.
6 and 7 and 8, or six. It was just 6 and 7. And of course,
Yeah,
8 was underground, wasn't even a proper Ridge
Unbounded.
Racer.
Yeah,
Unbounded,
yeah.
sorry, Unbounded wasn't even a proper Ridge Racer. Though it was a good fun game in its own right. It shouldn't have
Mm.
been called that.
That's the
And that
problem. Once you
that
attach
was
that name,
2011.
that brand, you have an expectation, don't you? When it's very different, it's
Exactly,
going to be very alienating to a lot of the fan base. But yeah,
exactly. So that was 2011, and yeah,
really, that
so
far back?
that
Goodness
far
me.
back when I did that interview, yeah, a long time ago. And so, Inertial Drift coming along. Another game that looks pretty promising at the moment is Circuit Superstars, top-down racing game, quite realistic handling to
Yeah.
it in the sense that you've got weight and inertia gently on the power. You can spin out, yet so incredibly satisfying to play. I can tell you, hitting apexes in this game felt great.
Mm.
Uh, I think with friends,
Oh
it's
yeah.
going to be hugely competitive, and I
Yeah.
think this is one of the most quality indie
Yes.
games
Yes.
currently in development right now. I was playing it thinking this is what I wanted Micro Machines to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you play that and you think this is a game made by 3 guys, and yet then you look at Codemasters, a huge company with massive resource, all the tech, and they can't seem to make a Micro Machines game.
Mm.
It's just the mind boggles really. And then you see an indie developer doing this, and yes, we need lots of cars, lots of locations, lots of modes, and a rock solid online mode. And I really do feel that if they can put together a ranked mode online
Mm.
as well as setting up your own lobbies, then you can have great tournaments on this, and they really have something special. But They cannot cut corners. They have to do it properly. I would rather delay the game because let's face it, it's not like it's going to date. I'd rather see it delayed and released as a complete product than do what, say, was happened to Grid recently, where they released essentially a game that was unfinished and then add parts to it
Yeah.
afterwards, because that's not the way to build and establish a community. Circuit Superstars was a lot of fun, Kevin. I know this is one you're looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game I've been following for years now. The developers often show like the pit stop animation, the crew, and just the level of detail and the charm in this game is undeniable. It's just such a solid quality product, isn't it? It remains to be seen how much of a game there is, how long it is, how many modes there are, etc. But they have the basics right. It really sort of reminds me of Mantis Burn in some ways. The fluidity of the handling of the vehicles, you have that satisfying feeling, like you said, when you make an apex. So if it sort of plays like Mantis Burn with all the various elements in place that makes it its own thing, it's going to be a hit, I'm sure. And it has a bit of money behind this. They've got a publisher involved, and they will promote this game well. So hopefully it does really well. It just looks so charming and so like cute. It has a lot going for it, and like you say, it has this realistic handling model, so it's matching these charming visuals with a sort of realistic undertone there. So it's going to be an interesting mix. You can see that the cars are sort of understeering, oversteering, and they're doing all the bits you'd expect a real world car to do. So yeah, it has that depth of handling, which again we mentioned in for the previous game. It's nice to see that in an indie game. Just because it's a cute looking game doesn't mean it doesn't have to have depth. So it's good to see that in place. And it's just like a really high quality art style as well. It's another game that has a strong style. They know what they're going for. They've nailed the visuals as far as I can see. And yeah, just looking forward to getting my hands on this. Really, it just looks like a good quality indie game that really brings up the whole sort of indie game market, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks like it's a sort of game I'm looking forward to playing with people online when I'm streaming and stuff like that. I think it's going to be a fun, a fun game online. I just look forward to it. I think it, and depends what modes they have as well. But it is one I'm looking forward to. So Circuit Superstars, we've gone from uniqueness with inertial drift to the fun top-down Micro Machines gap on the market with Circuit Superstars. Next, I was looking at, we're going sort of futuristic racing for the next few titles, because there was Gravity Chase, which we saw an early build of. I say early build, it's coming out next year. Gravity Chase at the moment, it's one of those games that I feel I'm concerned about. The developer is biting off more than they can chew, in the sense that it still needs a lot doing to it to grab you in any way. It's not it's not terrible. It's got lots of nice polished components to it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot not in there. There's a lot that's not, the driving experience isn't fulfilling enough, and there's lots of small things that for me lack long-term longevity and interest, and lack a wider market for it. I just can't see that it has the elements to bring it together. It's one of those games where, when you start off making a game like this, you've really got to think about the finished article. Why am I doing it? Who's going to play it? Who's going to buy it? What makes it unique? What's going to keep people coming back? What's going to be amazing in terms of online dragging people on? Why are people going to share it with their friends? All these little questions you need to answer as a business plan, not as a creator. And the business of games is different to the creation of games. And if there's one thing I noticed with a lot of independent developers, is they have no clue how to market their games. And I mentioned this to another game we'll get onto in a moment, Art of Rally developer, and I mentioned the scene out of Talladega Nights. I don't know if many of you have seen Talladega Nights, but there's a scene where he's having his first interview, and he says, I don't know what to do with my hands. My hands, they just keep coming on up. And it's just where he just didn't know. He wasn't PR trained. He didn't know how to speak on camera. And it's the same with indie developers. You've got to PR your game. You've got to market your game. You've got to let the world know about it and let them know what's unique about it. And it's a really important message. And big companies get it wrong as well. I mean, look at Grid. they named their game the same name as their old game 11 years ago and called the game Like No Other as a slogan, which obviously is nonsense. So I think Gravity Chase, it's got some nice elements to it, but at this stage it's there's a lot to be done if it's going to get. I feel that it's something that will find a very niche audience, maybe if he can find it, but it's a challenging one. I'm going to move on swiftly on this one, Kevin, to Warp Drive, which I feel is in a similar boat. It's a game that has much higher production values. It has really nice artwork and sort of cel shading and vivid environments. But at the moment, it's lacking in overall gameplay. It's lacking in the feel of the craft, the feel of the driving. I wasn't hitting my brakes. I wasn't hitting air brakes. I wasn't feel like I was bringing anything. I was just following the track and pressing A to warp onto the section required when required. The control itself was indirect. I was oversteering constantly and trying to constantly correct. I could never put the craft exactly where I wanted it to go, and that felt almost like you just hold down go and the craft goes, and then you just go from side to side hitting A, and that's all you do for the whole run. So graphically nice, but I didn't feel the racing experience was remotely rewarding. I think that's something that needs, as a demo, it was an early tech demo, nice tech demo, very nice. I mean, as I say, the artwork behind it, the effects, really nice. But now they need to build a game onto it. And again, that's something with indie games, like we were saying, Gravity Chase. They've got to find a market for that. That's it's not as easy as it looks. Yes, you're going to get the market that's initially wowed by the look of it, but in terms of longevity, they need to really build a game around that that's going to keep people going. And then from that, Kevin, I'm going to move swiftly on to Pacer, and then we can talk a bit about Pacer, because I know I just want to get through those two. Pacer is a game that's been developing for a while. Just across those three, what have been your thoughts across those three titles?
As like the first couple of titles we mentioned, we mentioned the depth in the handling, whereas perhaps the last couple lack that depth of handling. Although they have very strong art styles and look fantastic, particle effects, the vision has been realised tremendously well from the environments they showed off, but they just lack in the gameplay, don't they? So it's striking that balance of visuals and gameplay to really bring forward a good game that's going to excite people. But I guess with Pacer, it certainly has the visuals, but it's something that we've been critical in the past about is the handling. Yet again, it has some issues, doesn't it? Still.
Yeah, I mean, Pacer obviously is an evolution from or development of the Formula Fusion game, which was released. I don't know, when was it released, Kevin? A couple of years ago now, 3 years ago, 2 years ago,
2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, it's quite a while
2 years
ago.
Now. 2 years ago, and it's graphically, it's really polished. It's really coming along nice. Handling wise, I've always felt that the handling has been lacking. It's still lacking.
They've changed it dramatically, haven't they? It's very pointy. Front.
It was always like that. It was always like that. Was all the problem with
okay.
it was it never had a soft, bouncy inertia. It was always a bit rigid in the way it turned, and it turned on a kind of pivot that meant the back end kept sticking out, bouncing off walls. When the front of the ship was seemingly
so you can't get into your flow that way, and a Wipeout was all about the flow, wasn't it?
That's right, banking. You were banking into corners, so when you turn, the ship would bank, or the craft. Whereas in this, it turns, it doesn't bank in the right way. So the driving experience doesn't feel as specialized or as rewarding as Wipeout in that sense at all. But then I kind of said in the summer, you've got to look at this differently. You've got to see it as its own game. This is not Wipeout. This is not that, it's a different style. And I think this, because they were using Designers Republic, and because they have an identical visual style to Wipeout,
and also they have the cold storage audio.
That's right. That's right.
So it's going to be compared to Wipeout.
That's right. That's right. But it's not. The handling is. You've got to really look at it. And I think once I came to terms with that, I enjoyed it for what it was. So graphically, very polished. You'll see in our developer interview, there are tons of game modes and elements that's going to be in the final game. I felt that the weapon systems needed to be more balanced. For example, there's this stretch of lightning that goes across the entire track, and I didn't feel there was anything I could do about that. You do have a shield option, but it would be great if there was some kind of warning or something that gave you an option of countering.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't feel I understood. Perhaps there was, and I didn't know what I was doing enough. Obviously,
Mm,
because we're playing this very quickly. We had three races, three different locations. First race, I got blown up, which is the one that you see recorded. Was leading and got blown up, and that was it. The second race, I went for a defense ship, but came in last, miles behind because I had no speed, because I just had a massive defense. And then the third race, I went with low defense, but won the race because I just went, let's put all the effort into speed and going for it. Um, and I didn't feel there was enough strategy. I would need to see the balance in the gameplay in terms of,
yeah. Perhaps different
like,
game modes might suit different craft.
yeah, yeah, and if you got something like if you knew you could hold a weapon like in Mario Kart, you
Yeah.
can hold a green shell behind your cart or something,
Hmm.
and if someone fires a red shell, it's going to hit that green shell, or you can just lob it in somebody's way, or have a banana
Mm,
skin hanging there. You need something like that. You need some mines and some sort of defense system where you can say, right, I'm going to put my weapons into defense mode, something like that. Uh, it needs that sort of strategy to it. Otherwise, what happens is every time you're in the lead, you're like, oh no, I'm in the lead. Everybody is firing weapons at you, and before you know it, you're in last place again. That's kind of how it felt at the moment. I was better off ducking behind the front four or
okay.
front three and just waiting until the final lap, and then everybody just blows each other up and hopes for the best. The guy I blew up on the finish line when I won the race. It was quite satisfying, actually. I just
Nice.
saved this machine gun until the final straight, and he blew up on the line, and then I won the race. So it felt satisfying, but I can imagine for him it was hugely frustrating because his blown up ship that flew across the line in first, but of course it didn't count. So yeah, it was good fun. It was competitive, and yeah, I think that Pacer is going to be a very polished, fun game. But whether it finds a big market, I couldn't say. But at the moment, they're very positive about how well it's converting to the PlayStation, and they feel that the PlayStation Xbox conversions should be 60 frames, looking good. The new tracks look excellent,
Yeah.
really polished. Game is looking great. What's quite funny at the show though was the developers were supposed to record direct feed, and in the end, all we got was direct feed of replays with no audio, which really didn't show off the game very well. I have to admit, it never ceases to amaze me sometimes how developers don't have quality content ready for media and content creators to be able to show you guys, because the game looks a lot better than the aspects we're showing you. The audio has been improved on this version. It does give you a lot more intensity
Mm.
in the overall experience. But either way, that's something that we'll have to save for later. So Pacer was again another one to look forward to. So out of the show, we've got a couple more. Of course, we had Art of Rally. Which we've been seeing for some time. Video will be coming up on the channel, but we're waiting until we have some direct feed because we really need direct feed and direct audio to be able to show you this one properly. So that is coming along with developer interview. And there's Gear Shifters, which was practically a tech demo. It was so early, very little to show on it at this stage. And again, we're waiting for some direct feed to put together a video for you guys, but that's going to come as well. So in terms of the independent racing games, there was one more at the show, but a couple more bits, but they were so early, so basic that I thought, well, let's just save them for another time until they're actually completed. But generally speaking, Inertial Drift, Circuit Superstars, and Pacer were the three indie racing games of the show to keep an eye on, and they're the ones I'll be looking forward to playing in the future. Elsewhere at the show, I suppose we should just have a quick chat about the show.
Yeah.
Uh, show itself was obviously it was at over at East London XL Centre. The venue itself felt empty to me. It's very noisy.
Was very
It
noisy.
was
Yeah.
it was soulless.
Yeah.
They didn't have any kind of carpet. It felt very much like a Comic Con. It didn't felt tacky. It didn't feel like there was a polish to the event at all. Uh, it just felt, yeah, it just felt a bit soulless, really, a bit noisy. A lot of the conferences that take place and the chats they have used to have sort of separate rooms, but in here they were all in the main hall. You could barely hear what anyone was saying. It was pointless trying to listen to them. And from a media perspective,
Yeah.
they the entry to the show was like half a mile down in the Excel Center. So I had to wheel my case in, get it searched, and every time I went in and out, I had a 15-minute walk. The the storage for your case was at the exit, another 15-minute walk away. There was no sort of media support there. So in terms of covering the show, that wasn't comfortable to cover. And
No.
I think the show lacked a lot of atmosphere this year. For me personally, as someone who's visited EGX since its inception, I still felt that the old Billingsgate ones were the best many years ago.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, for me, it was the most soulless show there's been in terms of EGX, and it was my personally my least involved. I much prefer even the Tobacco Dock they have Rejects Resd
Yeah.
was much better.
Great venue, isn't it? Do you think the EGX is perhaps on its way out potentially, based on what you saw this year?
You know what? I think when you look at there was a couple of crowded events, but the crowds weren't as big as they have been at previous shows. That some of the stands that are there, Sony were there, but Microsoft weren't there.
Mm.
Not Ubisoft weren't there. Not many big publishers were there.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
it
was it more of a? Did it feel like more of an indie showcase in that respect?
it did. It felt more like a very spread out indie showcase than it wasn't the right venue for it at all.
No.
The venue just didn't work for it at all, and I don't feel that the industry is giving them enough support right now. I don't know whether it's what they're charging or what, but I remember the conferences. Some of the conferences were just half empty on a couple of the days. They were really busy on Saturday at the show, but Thursday, Friday, and Sunday weren't all that busy really. And yeah, just all round, I didn't feel there was enough new there. There wasn't enough new stuff there to see and do. There didn't seem to be a lot there for me to discover. One of the core highlights of the show was Cyberpunk 2077, and that for me was horrendous experience. I went up to I got my meeting booked as I do as Mr. Journalist, and I was meeting the person there to go in. They said, fine, you see you've got your camera equipment, no filming or recording. I said, no, that's fine. And then I went for my Q shortcut, which I have, and the guy said, you've got a camera there, no filming, recording. I said, fine. And then I got near the door. Someone said, no filming, recording, please. No cameras, please. And I said, no, that's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm not recording it. I'm not filming it. I was walking to the door. Someone said, can you pull your mic out? Pull your mic out the camera. I said, look, I'll pull the mic out, but you do realize there's a mic built into the camera, yeah? But I'll pull it out just for you, right? Walking in, someone said, can you put your camera away, please? Put your camera away. Next person said, put your camera in your case. I said, no, look, it's all set up. It's all switched off. I'm not recording the screen. Let's put it down here. Look, it's down there between my legs. It can't even see the screen. Next person says, sorry, you can't have your camera there. This is literally over and over. In the end, I said to the security guard, look, tell you what, why don't I just walk out? Why don't we just call it a day? Look, I'm the media. I've got all my camera equipment. I've got my microphones. I've got my tripods. What am I supposed to do with it all? That's what I've brought here today to cover the show. Eventually, they said, oh, no, just leave it at the back. So then I put all my equipment at the back and I sat in a back row, and the guy comes up to me and says, it's not personal. I said, it wasn't about it being personal. I've literally had grief just trying to get to my seat for my media appointment to see the game, and it was just put me in a bad mood, and after that I really couldn't really enjoy the presentation in quite the way I would like to have, really, because for me it was a pleasure to see. But it really was almost an Americanized, overzealous community. I thought to myself at the time, if I wanted to record a presentation, I would use a small hidden camera with a microphone if I wanted to, and I could easily record it. I wouldn't go in there with giant camera equipment that I use and my microphones, and I wouldn't be weighing it all down. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess
It's a
it's
bit,
like a sign of the times. Like
yeah,
everyone has videos on their phones, etc. A
yeah,
lot more YouTubers will be let in that perhaps not as trusted as traditional media
yeah.
people. So I can understand the sort of paranoia, but it seems like it's got to a stage now where it's, like you say, overzealous. It's too much, and it really impacts your enjoyment of the show.
Yeah, I got ejected from a show a few years ago, an arcade show
Mm.
about back in 2017. I got ejected from a show, and they said to me, "No, no cameras." I said, "You do realise?" They said to me, "No cameras, no cameras." I said, "I'm here as media." "Yes, but you're not allowed to film." "But I'm here as media. I'm here as video media." "Yes, but you're not allowed to film, even though you're here as video media." Okay. And so then I got ejected from the show. I said, "You do realise that people have videos on their phones?" "Oh yeah, that's okay." "Why is it okay?" "It's okay because it's not as good quality." So you'd rather people took poor quality videos on their phones, that's acceptable, rather than a proper camera filming a proper job of the content. How do you think it represents the arcade companies? It's okay, it's the way we want it. Okay, fine. And that's what's weird when you go into an event like this. It's not the people with the giant cameras that you need to worry about. It's the people with phones and hidden cameras that you need to worry about. And so it really kind of put a dampener on it. But I will say, Cyberpunk 2077, despite that, was for me, you know, still a highlight.
Okay.
It looks stunning.
You're not like a traditional RPG fan, but you like the sort of more action oriented RPG,
That's
I guess.
that's right. Yeah. I feel that I find RPGs to be a bit tiresome, a bit slow, and I find that when you complete an RPG, if you go back to the beginning and you know how to complete it, you always do. I always do the stuff that skips a turn or puts the enemy to sleep. And then I just power up that weapon over and over again. And there's always a weapon that does damage, and there's a weapon that seems to do nothing. And if you just keep powering up the weapon that seems to do nothing, then it suddenly becomes like the most powerful weapon in the game. And then after that, you can just walk it. Any enemy just can't take you. And whereas with Cyberpunk, there's so many different ways to play it. There's so much depth in there that I think that I could see myself if providing I have the time. It's one of the problems with a game like Elite Elite Dangerous is a good example. It's getting through the tutorial is my big problem. Is when you've got massive tutorials, that's usually the thing that puts me off.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that Cyberpunk has an involvement in the game where you learn it as you develop, not that you have to sit there for 36-hour play
Yeah.
session just to learn how
I
to play
know. I
the
mean,
game.
I'm a fan of RPGs, but when there's so much, when there's too much on the HUD, it's an instant put off for me because it's overly complex and it's like it's not enjoyable. You have to really nerd out to really get the game.
Mm,
And it's like I can't be dealing with that. It's too
no,
much.
no, it's too much. And so I'm kind of hoping that that it's got that. But I will say that what I've seen of it so far, it's a very immersive world. It's a game definitely going to stream, and I'm very much looking forward to Cyberpunk 2077 as a gamer. In terms of if nothing else, but it's one that's really looking exciting. And so yeah, I think that obviously it was the main game that was on display at the show, but there was a lot of new games not shown at all. There wasn't really a lot there that I could say was massively exciting. There was Medieval I saw there on the PS4, which looks good. There was a few PSVR games, and we talked a bit about this. There was Iron Man being shown on the PSVR, so I got a bit of footage of that. Relatively basic experience, really. It was more flight orientation than actual gameplay or progression in any way. Uh,
Mm.
it's nice to have the HUD, and like you say, just getting into that whole Iron Man vibe. But it does feel like the game's a bit late. I mean, if you know what happens in the Avengers movies, you know that we could have really done with this, you know, 2 or 3 years ago. It just
Yeah.
seems a bit late to bring Iron Man into it now.
I'm hoping it's not
You
so
know.
basic that it can be compared to the Batman VR game, which is like an hour and a half long and very
Mm,
limited. I'm hoping there's a bit more to it, but from what I've seen, from what they've showcased at EGX, it just seems like they're showing what they already showed in the trailer. So I don't know how much game there actually is there. So, but it's coming next year anyway, and it'd be interesting to see how big the game is because it will sell well,
yeah.
but it will be a full price release. That's the problem. So it could leave a lot of people unsatisfied if there's not a lot of game there, and you're sort of paying for the brand rather than what's involved in the game. But we'll have to wait and
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Iron Man. But either way, people seem to be enjoying it. I mean, all the VR games, people seem to have good fun on all of them. And as I say, Sony have already revealed that, of course, the PS5 will be backwardly compatible. And yeah, we'll just wait and see on that. But elsewhere at the show, yeah, had a wander. Virgin had a big stand. There was a racing gaming competition taking place. Nintendo had a big stand. Now, I have to admit, I didn't hang around too much around Nintendo. Again, they were a bit strict with people and the milling around on the stand. And I have to admit that something that I found at EGX is, as media, you don't seem to like they used to have an hour where the media could go in and film, or up to midday actually years ago, and film
Mm,
everything. They used to have a media office, which was really helpful because you'd walk around the show and you just needed somewhere to chill out and upload your files onto your laptop and stuff like that. They didn't seem to have that this year, and you find you go on stands and there's no support, people moving you off because you've got a camera or stuff like that. I just found it to be Sony in the past have probably been the least helpful. I mean, I remember years ago them just literally ejecting me from the stand, and I said, "Well, I don't care about playing the game. I just want to film it," and they just weren't helpful at all if it wasn't pre-booked and all this kind of thing. So it's never been the most helpful sort of for journalists. And I don't think that helps in a way because I think if the show was more helpful to journalists, more publishers would get more value out of it.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Listen, it's great when 50,000 people come to your show and play your game, but when one YouTuber can have 50,000 viewers and you've got 50 YouTubers, that's much more important.
Mm.
Uh, Getting everybody on there.
That's where you
You
need, like like you say, the media only hours or day or whatever. So then the two don't intermix. The two don't interfere with each other.
That's right.
You
You
know.
can just go
So
there. You've got a job to do.
mm,
Same with queuing up. They
yeah,
have a queue. Exhibitors, PR, developers, media all had to go in the same queue as the general public.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which when you're there to do a job, it's deeply frustrating, especially when you get some really slow people in front of you that are just not ready with their tickets, not ready for their bag search, nothing, and you're stuck in a queue for an extra 30 minutes. And when I have meetings to get to, stuck there in a queue, and I didn't bank on an additional 15-minute walk. Uh, you know, protests at Canning Town Station that morning, and dealing with all this. So it was oh yeah, we had Extinction Rebellion, didn't we? What a nightmare that was. But anyway, that's another thing entirely. That's over and done with now, thankfully. And yeah, there was police at the station and all that, so they calmed it all down. But that was actually on the day at VGX, I might add.
Mm,
So yeah, it was there's lots of little things I think that they need to look at in terms of developing the atmosphere again. But
yeah, yeah,
it definitely was a show that, I mean, the retro gaming area was again, it's nice to have it all there, but there was definitely something lacking. It lacked that kind of living room feel. There was a time in the past when it was all carpeted and it felt like a living room and people would sit there and bean bags and playing games. It didn't have that. There was no central point of contact for the retro gaming area. So if you want to talk to somebody about the consoles or ask any questions, there was nobody there to talk to at all about any of these consoles or any of the games on display or anything. It was very strange. There's a board gaming area, which is great for the board gaming guys, but doesn't sell board games. It doesn't introduce anyone to board games. I didn't feel it was welcoming in any way. It was just a board gaming area. And then you have a console gaming area, which is huge, but again, I don't feel there's any activity there. There was nothing inclusive there that got got people involved. It's just here's a PlayStation running a PS3 running a game. It's great. I always think it's great when you have competitions, your involvement, you're making new friends. There's not enough there for that kind of thing. So everyone's in their own little bubbles, if you like. You've got the board gaming bubble and the retro gaming bubble. But when I speak to other retro gaming guys, it's fun to have it there. But like you say, there's no real involvement for everybody at the show. So yeah, I felt that, the show was sort of spread out. I had Doom there. I didn't
Cool.
go in and play Doom. Uh, they had, what was it, Daisy there,
Yeah.
there as well. I didn't go into those two. I mean, obviously, I'm a massive Doom fan, but for me, this might sound a bit silly, but depending on the stand and the setup, I don't always get a lot from playing games on the show floor. It's okay to do it functionally to make videos and discuss them on here, but it's noisy, it's sweaty, it's not the best environment.
No, it's
Some of
not.
these games, when I really, really want to play a game, I sometimes just want to go home, chill out, put my sound system on, and just turn the lights out and just play it. And that for me is where I'm able to really get into a game and enjoy it. I'm not interrupted. I can just do it. I think when you're at a game show, it's especially like Doom or something. I just want to play Doom, properly play it. Or if we have a media event at some stage, go to the media event, sit me down, put my headphones on, and I can just sit there for an hour playing Doom. Not 5-minute deathmatch, shoot each other, run around, see a quick insta kill. No, that's not for me.
Yeah.
So I think that on the whole, it was. I mean, I enjoy my time there. I always enjoy popping along. But will there be an EGX next year? You asked actually, and
Mm.
I got to tell you, I think there will be, because they still made a fair old profit. It was £28 for a day pass,
Okay.
£75 for a 4-day pass. That's
I
and
guess.
they were rammed with people on the Saturday.
Yeah, it was very busy, wasn't it?
Yeah, so
I
if you
guess we're
think
looking
about it,
for a change in venue next year, perhaps to give it a bit more, uh, you know, make it a little bit more better all round. I guess.
I don't think it will happen, because when you see social media afterwards, everyone congratulates Eurogamer on saying, "Wow, this was a great show, guys, great show," and everyone's too sort of afraid to almost say actually probably any of the things I've highlighted really, but they
Mm.
think them. There's
Yeah.
people that think them, but they and I can see it being at the same venue next year. But if Eurogamer ever wanted to ask me, what do you think, Alan, of this or that, I'd tell them. I'd say, I'd look at venues and talk to them about what I feel, would work for the future of the Eurogamer show. But I think what really works is they've already been there. They need to go back to where they've already come from, and build community. I really do feel community is what's really important about Eurogamer, and I feel they need to find a way to bring that community together. It's funny actually. You have the cosplay
Yeah.
events
Yeah.
now, and they've taken center stage. I mean, there was quite a big you'll see clips of it, no doubt, as I've been talking. At the cosplay gathering. But cosplay. I remember when I used to go to Comic Cons, a long time ago, and the they were the most cringeworthy things. You'd see really, really rubbish costumes get
Yeah.
there doing some kind of short scene on stage, but some of them would have a scene that was quite drawn out. Nobody knew what was going on. It all got a bit boring. Then it all got awkward, and then you just sort of walk away because of the cringiness of it. It was really sort of badly done. Now
Yeah.
it's gone the other way. Now
Yeah.
people are turning up with hugely expensive costumes,
Yeah.
a lot of parts that they've not made at home, because
Mm.
professional cosplayers have very, very expensive equipment. They have
Mm.
access to limited stuff. And it's almost like there's kind of people sort of almost looking down on each other if their costumes aren't up to professional standard. I kind of felt it almost intimidating for people to get involved in now because it's
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah.
people with, frankly, the people with more money have better costumes,
Mm.
and it has become a little bit cliquey in that way. It's always been a bit cliquey, but it's more so than ever. So I'm finding the cosplay area, less approachable, much like some of the other aspects. I think it'd be nice to make it more approachable, and I think where cosplay is concerned, I think wouldn't it be great to have more of a place where people could learn how to make the costumes and make them at the show. Something like that. You actually develop your costume with the professional costume makers. You get shown what equipment you can use and what simple equipment to develop, effects and get involved in certain communities. And I think that would work well. Often when you see videos online of people doing face painting and stuff, they say, oh, well, I just started. I'd never done it before and I just did it and was immediately ended up with a result that was as good as Hollywood superstars. No, no. You've
Yeah.
been doing it for years and you've had a lot of training and practice. It doesn't just happen. And I think that lays out a bad message for people. So, no, I mean, I've been in this industry a long time. I've seen a lot of changes and I think we're going through a change. The show was at a transitional place. And I think two things are going to happen next year. I think Sony are going to launch the PS5 there and it's going to be massive. Or Sony are not going to be there, in which case it may not be the same. I think it'll exist, but I mean, I don't know. It doesn't look good. It kind of felt like a show to me that was sort of past its prime in a way.
Mm. I
And
mean, is it? I mean, the fact that we're so late in the generation, I mean, that's not going to help it, is it?
no, it's a bad year next year. This year is a bad year.
Yeah.
Next year is a really bad year because you end up in this place where there'll be a few big games, but they're not. No one really cares about it. All they care about is the new Xbox and the new PS5, and that's what everyone's going to care about. The year after is massive, So 2021 will be huge. Uh, However, if they can get a PS5 next year, then maybe Microsoft will turn up as well because they'll want to
Yeah.
rival it,
It'd be
and then
nice to.
suddenly it's the biggest EGX you've ever seen.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to give people a taste of the launch lineup at next
Yeah.
EGX. That's going to be the massive draw, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I would change venue for a start.
Yeah.
Whether you've got a stand or not, I would change venue. I'd do a different venue. Uh, and I thought, there are other venues. So they had the Billingsgate years ago. They've got Tobacco Dock for EGX Res. But then they've also got Earls Court, which was quite successful, and Kensington Olympia, which I happen to think is the best venue of its type in London for that kind of thing. If you're going to have big stands and small stands, Kensington Olympia works perfectly because you've got that, upper area that you can have all the indie games on. But you need big publishers supporting it, and they need costs to be reasonable. And what put ECTS out of business? ECTS was the biggest gaming trade show in Europe back in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. It was the best gaming show I've been to, full stop, apart from E3 in the late 90s and early 2000s, which blew your socks off. Absolutely blew you away. ECTS was amazing. What a show. And yeah, there's nothing like that now. I mean, stands, the big publishers are just not supporting it. So I don't know. We'll see. They're all about Gamescom. But Gamescom's getting expensive. I mean, Gamescom is going up in price all the time, and
Mm.
I do wonder if more and more. Again, they'll say, "Hey, we have 100,000 people coming a day," but it's nothing, is it? It's nothing, because, as I say, the media represent millions of people,
Yeah.
millions and millions and millions, and it's like when I went to E3 and I said, they're letting in the general public, and I would make appointments to see a lot of games, because you have to arrange appointments with the publishers to get behind closed doors, whatever. But when you've done all your appointments, you just have a walk around the show floor to see games perhaps that have slipped through the cracks or anything you can find. And occasionally you'd see a game and you'd think, I'd love to cover that game, but there's 10 people in the way, you know. And I remember being there with a couple of YouTubers at the time and saying, "Oh, I'd like to cover that," and whatever it was. I don't even know what the game was. It wasn't even might be driving. It might be something else, some kind of racing seat component thing. And you couldn't get near anyone to talk to on the stand. You couldn't get on the stand, and you just think, "Oh, forget it. I can't be bothered right now," and you walk on. And they've lost 200,000 views for 10 people that probably won't buy the product anyway. So, I do feel that the media at these events, to make it viable, EGX are about bums on seats and selling tickets, but publishers are about selling games. That's what they're about, selling games. And EGX needs to help facilitate that if it's going to continue as a show and continue to support the publishers, the game developers, and the general public. They've got to find out a way it's going to work. So, yeah, that's a few words on that. I went into one there, Kevin, but
it's always good to hear your insights, and obviously, you're very experienced, so you have a different point of view from a lot of people. But yes, it's good to have that sort of inside knowledge, as it were. And but yeah, there's certainly some improvements to be made to EGX. EGX is the UK's #1 gaming show, so we're more than a bit passionate about it. And if we see things that perhaps need improving, we will sort of voice our opinions.
Yeah, I mean that's not. I mean, listen, a lot of people. It's not to say it's a bad show. It's just that I can see there's areas for improvement. I think a lot of people go along to these shows and they're like, it might be their first ever show and they're the best time ever.
Yeah.
But having been to, I've done probably more than a year of my life in trade shows. Literally a year of my life in trade shows, literally over the past 25 years, and it's getting that balance right of gaming, of atmosphere, but also practicality, making it a comfortable place to play these games, making it a comfortable place to go to the conferences and listen to them and learn things and do things. And I think EGX, with a passion, I can see what EGX wants to become, but it's just important that the commercial aspect doesn't override fundamentally what it's all about. And I hope that they bring that balance together and it continues. But I think that's it for now, Kevin. Good chat today. We're going to come back later in the week, viewers, with a bit more. What have we got? A bit more chat on the news.
Yes, we'll do a podcast on the news coming up shortly, and there's been quite a few little bits sort of floating around as we get sort of gear up to the Christmas period, and obviously next year is going to be dynamite, isn't it, with a new generation console? So looking forward to seeing what sort of new racing IPs I guess we can look forward to, which is a podcast in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean we'll have to put that together actually, and there's a lot to look forward to as well. And then we're going to go through probably a similar lean period in terms of content to what you've seen at EGX, because we get caught in that period where we've just there's not many new games, so the content that's going to be on the channel is going to be all about what's already out there and maintaining that and surviving with that until the new generation of racing games come through. So let's hope that we don't wait another 4 years for new Gran Turismo. So we'll wait and see on that. But that's it from me and Kevin for now, viewers. Do like and subscribe. It supports what we do. Do support our Patreon and follow us on Twitch. Subscribe on Twitch, follow on Twitch, supports us there as well. If you like our content, we'd really appreciate that support at the moment, because we really need it from you, the viewers, in really just helping us get to these events and continue this coverage. But that's it from me for now. As ever, more soon. Thanks for watching today, viewers. I hope you enjoyed the video, and do like and subscribe. It supports what we do. You can go to the website directly above me here, or check out a couple of other videos on the channel, perhaps things you're interested in terms of racing games, whether it be new or retro. It's all there. Check them out.